Good morning. I'm Robert White, Council Member at Large and Chair of the Committee on Housing. Today is March 24th, 2026. The time is 10:09 a.m., and we're meeting in room 412 of the Johnny Wilson Building and on Zoom. I'm calling to order this public roundtable on three appointment resolutions, PR 26-538, the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners Denise Blackson Confirmation Resolution of 2026, PR 26-540, the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners Leroy Clay III Confirmation Resolution of 2026, and PR 26-542, the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners Raymond Skinner Confirmation Resolution of 2026. I want to thank all of our nominees for being here today. Today we will be speaking with nominees to the DC Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. The Housing Authority, or DCHA, remains central to the district's ability to provide safe, stable, and affordable housing. And yet, as we all know, the last several years have been a period of intense scrutiny and upheaval for DCHA. Following the 2022 federal report that raised serious concerns about the agency's performance and financial management, the council created the Temporary Stabilization and Reform Board, or STAR Board, to guide the agency through corrective action. That board led the search for a new executive director and has been responsible for stabilizing the agency. We are now moving toward the permanent governance structure that was established under the Rental Act last year, one that includes elected resident commissioners, which I fought hard to secure. This transition comes as the agency's performance continues to be under scrutiny. DCHA is still grappling with allegations of financial mismanagement, poor resident engagement, and communication delays in application processing, lack of transparency, and persistent staff turnover. There have been many bright spots over the past couple years with the new executive team coming on board and many issues within the agency starting to move in the right direction. But now, with the executive director, Keith Pettigrew, abruptly announcing his departure to lead the Chicago Housing Authority, the agency faces yet another leadership transition. I'm disappointed in his decision, and I'm disappointed that I found out in the Chicago Sun-Times, like everyone else, after working so closely with DCHA's executive team for the past several years. But I'm most concerned about the potential impact on residents who were counting on his team to deliver and need stability and continuity now more than ever. The board's responsibility to conduct strong oversight and clear direction has never been more important. Today, we will hear from the nominees who have served on the STAR Board and are now being considered for seats on the permanent board. My job is to carefully vet the nominees. Yes, they have been doing this work already, but we can't accept business as usual. We need to understand how their experience will contribute to long-term, transparent governance that drives real improvement. With another executive search ahead, we also need to hear how they intend to approach this transition, vet applicants, and ensure continuity of leadership. We must recognize that the agency has made progress in areas such as reducing lease-up times, but we must also recognize that the agency has attributed dysfunction to the governance overhaul after the HUD report, or the pandemic, or the unions, and that is not acceptable. We cannot measure success based on where we started any longer. Residents don't want more excuses, they want action. They don't want to hear that we're better than we used to be. They want to hear where we're going. I want to note that the mayor submitted nominations for all 7 appointed seats, but we will be speaking with only 3 of them today. Commissioner Teresa Silla and Commissioner Chris Murphy will testify at our hearing on the 30th. 2 other nominees withdrew for personal reasons, and I urge the mayor to fill those vacancies quickly. The final 2 seats on the board will be filled by elected resident commissioners, and the first of those elections will be no earlier than June. This board is about to lead the search for a new executive director, and doing so while incomplete raises serious questions about whether it has the full capacity and legitimacy to guide that process. That's why we'll be pushing for more council oversight in the selection process and transparency regarding contract negotiations for the next executive director. I look forward to speaking with the nominees in front of us today about the experience, perspective, and leadership they would bring to those roles. Most importantly, I want to hear how you plan to deliver concrete, measurable results for the thousands of residents who rely on DCHA for housing, stability, and opportunity. As we get started, I want to remind public witnesses you'll have 4 minutes to testify. At this time, I don't think any of our virtual witnesses are with us. If so, if they join, we will promote them. Public witnesses have 4 minutes to testify. Advisory neighborhood commissioners have 5 minutes to testify. Lastly, as I always note in our hearings, you will frequently see me looking down during your testimony. It's not an indication that I'm not paying attention, but rather an indication that I am taking notes. My staff is doing the same or administering the hearing, but it is important that people know that we respect them enough to listen to their testimonies when they come before our committee. So now we will move to our panel of public witnesses. I only see one, but I will call all the names. Catherine Thomas, William Jordan, Shanta High, Antonio Myers. Mr. Jordan, looks like it's just you today. Welcome, and you can begin your testimony.
Me against the world. Good morning. My name is William Jordan. I'm resident of Columbia Heights. I want to start by thanking Shanta High, past and other past presidents of the Park Norton Resident Council. They allowed me and trusted me to sit and listen to their hopes, their dreams, their visions, what they wanted to fight, what they wanted to work with in the redevelopment of their community. And from that, I got a very good perspective on residents, what they really brought to the table, the value, the vision. And I told them that I would do whatever I can to execute their vision, to share with the world what they see and what were the opportunities there. And so I found out that residents wanted to be a part of, have an equity stake in, and drive the redevelopment of their community. And so initially, Ms. Whitfield, who was the first president, had a vision that the residents would own the property at Park Morton, redevelop it. And they'd actually gotten funding from HUD to move that vision forward. And of course, it was killed through the politics. And we can get into that later. Later on, I took that experience and worked with Ms. High, who had a grand vision for Park Norton. And in that, we decided we could come down here, protest, shout, or we could draft a plan. And we drafted a plan. It was called the Park Norton Equity Plan. And we took that plan, which called for residents owning, residents having the opportunity, keeping everything there, resident council together, and to actually execute what was put in the original legislation. And so we set out to sell that equity plan. If I were to do it differently, I would hire a lobbyist. And the reason I bring this up in reference to the why we're here today is because one of the things we understood is that we would have to have a good relationship with the executive director and with the board. And that's what we did and set out to do. The phase one funding, which was started as a $15 million that the residents working with the then board and executive brought to the table. Brian Nadeau and DenPed wanted to hold off phase one until after Bruce Monroe. And they fought us tooth and nail to prevent moving phase one up because Bruce Monroe looks better on people's resumes. You get to brag about all of these things. So we started by having a chat and chew. So we called together and we invited the board members to come and sit. Because I knew if they ever sat with the residents like I sat with the residents wouldn't just be objects. They would be people with visions, and then we could work together to move things forward. So when Director Pettigrew came in, we invited board members to two chat and choose. We invited council members to two chat and choose. We invited people from DINPED because we wanted people to come together and have a conversation, talk to the residents, and really learn what we needed to move this thing forward. The council counseled out, board members counseled out, and we did two of them. Now, Mr. Pettigrew showed up. And so what we wanted to do is to make sure that Mr. Pettigrew was not bogged down in the quagmire of fixing the board, of fixing the housing authority, which we knew would suck all the energy out. And at best, we would get to zero, and zero would not move residents forward. So I'm here today to say to the council, which has structured a mission for the board, which is a widget structure. Just fill people in holes. And this comes from the council. So the board's hands are tied from working with the residents because of the council. The council doesn't have confidence in the residents. So therefore, it's not really that the people who are sitting over here are good or bad. They're being given bad instructions and a bad vision and being told to fix something that is not fixable. Parts of the housing authority just need to die. And we just need to work when we bring in a new executive director, take that window that we wasted with Keith Pettigrew and move things forward. I have a lot to say, but I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you being with us today. What parts need to die?
The demolition by neglect. The housing authority fell on purpose because we believe that the production of new housing will fix everything. So if we let the old housing die and build new housing, then everything will be better. So the first thing that needs to die is that concept that production of housing is the same thing as serving residents. So that needs to die. So that's, and when I say die, what I really mean is priority. We can't fix everything. So the other element is there's a concept that having strong resident councils, with power, not somebody so we can go charm them, but real power, real say, will be obstructionist to progress. And so whenever there's a new community, the first thing they do is to take apart resident representation so that it won't be an obstacle. So I would say the part that needs to die is this belief in this top-down approach, instead investing that money and energy into having strong resident representation, resident equity, and then figure it out. So I guess that's really what I mean by let it die.
I appreciate that. Let me take both of those. Let me start with neglect. There's been a lot of neglect in properties. I guess where I struggle is we need a lot of money to maintain these properties. Funding from the federal government, which started public housing, has decreased over the years. How do you see that the agency could operate better with the funding it has with respect to neglected properties?
Well, again, I would say that's what we need from the board. The board needs to have a greater vision than just focusing on the agency. The city has given tax abatements worth probably $1 billion, right? We have done development deals because the goal of demolition by neglect is to redevelop, right? So we cut all of these deals, sent all of the subsidy to development teams who then land banked,
Mhm.
right? So the energy was there, the money was there. We didn't spend it. We didn't spend it. And that's what we do. We do a deal, we go to zoning. I'll give this quick example. At Park Norton, there was never money in the 5-year capital plan to do Bruce Monroe. Never enough. But yet, we were building that as a build first site for the residents, knowing that there was never money in the budget to execute it. Right. So instead, that money went to, I won't call their names right now, but
Let me take the other piece.
Mhm.
And you mentioned, and it connects with your testimony, and you mentioned residents wanted to be a part of redevelopment or rehabilitation of their properties, and have a stake in it. What what would that look like in real life? Let's say we wanted to start to implement that, or the board said, we're really interested in implementing that. But they also recognize there may be things residents ask for that they can't do, or they, like anybody at the table, you may not get everything you want. What would that process look like if the board wanted to take that?
Again, residents would be partners in the same deal that everybody else is a partner in the deal. So I've learned that residents can hold up to approximately 13% equity in these live tech and other deals, and the deals still get funded and move forward. So it is possible for them to, and what that does, it keeps them at the table. So even though you don't get everything, you're at the table because things can't happen because you're a partner without you knowing about what's going on, having time to respond. And a good example that we could talk about now is Park Norton Phase 2, which is the only phase that really has 3-bedroom family size units and has potentially for sale units. The Housing Authority has a home ownership program, right? That they refuse to systematically implement. But if the council, the mayor, and the housing authority implement it, then some of those units would go to home ownership, right? Second, there's a way to put more 3-bedroom home ownership units and still maintain the set aside units, rental units in the same development, so that the rental units subsidize or basically make possible the home ownership. It's been done in New York and other places, and that's something that I've spoken to the agencies about, et cetera. So if we wanted to do it, or if we wanted to model it, we could model it in Park Norton Phase 2. So it's doable.
There are merits, obvious merits to a home ownership model, but the detriment is if these rental units become owned by the current residents, then where do the next wave of folks who need those rental units go?
What I just indicated, you can do both. You can do both. So the home ownership units and the rental units can be done together. And so you
By
would not
building more units.
Mhm,
By
yeah.
building, okay.
You would get more, but the homeowner would basically buy a duplex and rent one back to the agency is the simplest way to say it. And so then that way, the rental unit is there. It helps the homeowner purchase,
Yeah.
right? And then you move it forward. That's why in the beginning, with Park Morton, we asked for a co-op as well, so that some residents would stay rental, some could be in the co-op, some could move forward over time to move up the chain. Also, most of the residents have families that they can't bring together because of the rules. I don't know if you saw the article in the paper. There was a woman who basically has a 2-unit duplex. One of the persons staying in it was a voucher holder. The voucher holder brought in a companion. The voucher holder notified the person that he would be moving, the owner that she would be moving, and the person passed. And so the person still in the unit was the companion who didn't have a voucher. So the owner, which is a small unit owner, is in line of default because the person in there can't pay the rent. But if you kick the person out, they go onto the streets, right? But if you have what I'm saying, there would be a way for that person to move.
Yeah.
Same thing that Park Morton could easily partner with Talbot Street with the home of phase 2 home ownership and help solve that problem. So, but we can't do that because the board, if I talk to the board about that, that's not in their mission. It's build warehouse people, build widgets, and do reports. So I'm suggesting that the things you're saying that are challenges, of course there are, but those challenges can be solved working with residents. And residents don't have all the magical cure, but obviously we don't either.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I'm hearing is that you want the board to be more visionary and resident focus as opposed to structure focus. Is that fair?
Right, and that the structure focus be on building that resident structure.
Yeah.
So that they're ready. And then I guess the last thing is the economic development or the economic growth of those resident families be a priority. Because in many cases, we've had, and that's one of the things that we learned, with Park Morton, there was a family had one member and one at Park Morton and one at another site, right? The mother, but together they would have too much income. So they were kept separate. So the younger person had to get a part-time job instead of a full-time because she had to go take care of her senior mother across town. But the rules of the housing authority would not allow them to live together.
Right.
However, if we had executed 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 in Park Morton redevelopment, the next phase of units, the middle, could have accommodated that family. So you would have freed up a unit. That unit that you would have had would have been more stronger economically. And we haven't even spoken about new jobs and all of those other things. So a lot of things could be done and fixed if we were 15, 20% better. And the board just focused 20% on making residents better. And then using the other tools that they have to strengthen residents instead of, we use, new market tax credits. There's like a slush fund for everybody else to do their project. Almost none of those projects directly benefit residents, always tertiary, well, it's help this nonprofit and that nonprofit might hire somebody and blah, blah, blah. And we know that doesn't work, so.
Well, I appreciate your testimony. I mean, these things are important. I would say, most of the people who invite me in their homes and public housing, they're immaculate. But human nature, if you have an ownership stake, you're going to treat things generally a little different, and it creates a different kind of buy-in. These types of ideas are the ones that get quickly lost and brushed aside in the day-to-day emergencies, which is all the more reason you need an executive director and a board that want to create a vision and make sure that these ambitious things are part of that vision. As we are looking to install a permanent board and at some point a new executive director, this is the time to have those conversations about an ambitious vision for the agency.
Yeah, and I forgot one last thing. 3 months. Make me ED 3 months and I'll put it in place. 3 months.
I like
That's all I need.
shoot
is
your
3
shot,
months.
Mr. Jordan. I like
That's
it.
all I need is 3 months.
That's it. All right, well, you're not gonna leave after a month and a half, are you? All right, boom, boom, yeah. All right, thank you very much for being with us. We're gonna move to, our nominees. And so I will invite, Chair Skinner, Raymond Skinner, Commissioner Denise Blackson, and Commissioner Leroy Clay III, to join us. And before we begin, I'm going to swear you all in since you are our official witnesses. So I would ask that you raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Housing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yep. Thank you very much. You can begin. Do each of you have a testimony? Yes. Okay, excellent. We'll start with you, Chair Skinner.
Good morning, Chairman White, members and staff of the Housing Committee. I am Raymond Skinner, and I'm honored to appear before you this morning as a nominee for reappointment to the DC Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. I would like to thank Mayor Bowser for nominating me, and I would be privileged to continue serving the constituents of DCHA and the greater district community. I was first appointed to the DCHA Board in December of 2021 based on my background and experience in the housing and community development field. Over more than 50 years as a public servant, I've held executive level positions in the district, Prince George's County, and the state of Maryland. These roles included 15 years as Secretary of the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. Throughout my career, I gained in-depth knowledge and experience in all aspects of local, state, and federal housing programs, including the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, Community Development Block Grants, home and other programs. I've also managed large budgets of up to $400 million and supervised significant staff teams. My work enabled me to build relationships with various federal agencies like HUD, FHA, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac. Additionally, I engage with the national professional advocacy organizations, providing me with a broad perspective on programs and practices nationwide. As a result, I was honored to have served on the board of directors of the National Council of State Housing Agencies and the National Housing Conference, among others. For the past 3 years, I have served as chairperson of the DCHA Stabilization and Reform Board, known as the STAR Board. The Mayor and Council established the STAR Board to strengthen governance at DCHA and oversee the implementation of reforms and operational improvements. The STAR Board has worked diligently over the last 3 years to fulfill the mandate of its authorizing legislation. We began with organizational tasks such as restructuring committees, updating bylaws, and completing required training. The board then conducted a national search and hired Keith Pettigrew as executive director in November 2023. Not only have board members worked well together, but the board has also collaborated effectively with Director Pettigrew and his team, leading to operational upgrades and policy changes that have produced measurable improvements at DCHA. These include increased public housing occupancy rates, improved utilization of housing choice vouchers, and most of all, enhanced customer service. I believe the board is now functioning as an effective governing body, and my hope is that this positive momentum will be allowed to continue by reappointing members of the current board. Stability and continuity in agency governance are crucial as DHCD continues to address HUD compliance issues and seeks to gain confidence of regulatory agencies and outside investors. This is particularly important as DCHA endeavors to secure private capital to support redevelopment of its properties. Now that DCHA is in a more stable position, it can pivot to look to the future. It has become clear that HUD wants to get out of the public housing business as we know it. This will require PHAs nationwide to become more self-sufficient and operate more like private businesses. If confirmed, I will use my broad experience and what I've learned over the last 3 years to help DCHA make this transition. We need to develop a long-range strategic plan, a vision that envisions what DCHA might look like over the next 5 years or even 10 years into the future. In conclusion, although DCHA has made substantial progress in recent years, significant challenges remain. I am eager for the opportunity to confront these challenges directly, working collaboratively with fellow board members, agency staff, district agencies, the council, public housing residents, and a wide range of community stakeholders. My focus will remain on practical, pragmatic, and results-oriented solutions where the objective is really to get things done. And I will continue to bring to this work my underlying values of hard work, integrity, transparency, and accountability. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to appear before the committee this morning, and I welcome any questions you may have for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Denise Blackson, welcome. And if you would hit the button on, yep.
Okay. Good morning, Chairperson White and members of the committee. I am Denise Blackson, and it's my pleasure to receive your consideration for my nomination to serve as a member of the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. I am grateful to Mayor Bowser for nominating me and honored to have this opportunity to serve the residents of the district. As an engaged resident commissioner, I facilitate monthly meetings with resident leaders, welcoming participation from all interested individuals. During these gatherings, we share concerns and I work to obtain responses, often involving the directorate team, representatives from other divisions, city council members, HUD officials, DCHA and MPD police, and various organizations and agencies. I also assist leaders in organizing emergency safety meetings, resident gatherings, offering advice on potential invitees. I actively engage with all different communities in all 8 wards of the district, meeting with residents, leaders, management teams, and DCHA staff to discuss these concerns, programs, and more. I prioritize attending DCHA resident community meetings and events to introduce myself and evaluate the conditions of their communities and homes. The residents truly appreciate this support. I often hear from residents directly how much they appreciate my presence and value the assistance. Furthermore, I organize in-person leadership meetings to empower resident leaders in strengthening their communities. I value one-on-one interactions with resident leaders, residents, or staff seeking guidance on specific issues. With years of experience as an active community leader, I want to say over 20 years of active community leader experience, my commitment extends beyond my immediate community to encompass the broader population. My role is to serve, and I strive to address any negativity or issues brought to my attention with diligence and care. I have encountered myself 1 or 2 instances when individuals express dissatisfaction with myself or with DCHA staff. In response, I made every effort to assist them in a professional and calming manner. I firmly believe in the principles of openness, honesty, and fairness. I have received complaints regarding DCHA from both clients and staff. I have assured everyone that our primary objective is to support those we serve and ensure that we do not cause them any distress. As a commissioner, I take a hands-on approach, visiting residents' home upon invitation to understand their concerns directly. I'm dedicated into assisting in any capacity that I can. I endorse all leaders to promote their community events or meetings that I attend and actively participate in. I attended citywide advisory boards meetings with the prior board as an invited guest. I endeavored a confrontation during there, and I did my best to assist to ease the conversation between the guests that was attending. I participated in many of the trips with DCHA staff with the seniors, assist with activities and residents. I definitely believe in the hands-on approach. They recognize me as their commissioner and look for me to attend these gatherings. This is an honor and a blessing to assist our residents. I've provided immediate assistance to seniors following the fire loss of her home. She lost her home, and she said no one has ever dealt with her in that manner from the DC Housing Authority or any board. Additionally, I have been a steadfast supporter of DCHA staff who express concerns, compliments, or desire to engage. I participated in various events, including the ATP program, with suit fittings, graduation, numerous gatherings hosted by the Office of Resident Services. I actively participate in trips with the youth. I even hosted a commissioners camp last year with children from all 8 wards. I had about 15 participants, just a FYI. And my presence is to serve and encourage the staff, residents, and community members. I serve on the Operations Committee, and I also chair the Committee on Resident Services, where I continue to be highly active in community outreach, which I believe should be a priority on the board as well. With support from the chair and other commissioners, I have seen an increase in attention paid to my committee and their impacts. In addition to my role on the Operations Committee, where we create policies, my primary responsibility as a commissioner include managing the budget and contracts, as well as approving and reviewing financial documents. As a board, we diligently examine and compare contracts and budgets with actual expenses and revenues. In my capacity as the chair, which involves all leaders, I serve as the intermediary between the resident leaders and DCHA staff. Some leaders concerned about potential retaliation are reluctant to engage directly with DCHA personnel. Me being a resident myself of once public housing and currently as a voucher holder, leaders entrust in me to bridge that gap and be as transparent as possible. During our monthly meetings, which is an initiative called the Block by Block, the executive director and his staff address selected questions from the residents directly, and myself. I facilitate the communication by articulating inquiries from leaders who prefer not to voice their concern publicly. These questions may be conveyed to me directly or sent via text during the meeting. Furthermore, I conduct research to uncover answers to the solutions or issues they raise. I coordinate 3 or more monthly events every month from all leaders across all 8 wards, commissioners, and residents to engage in initiatives to enhance their community. I also engage in outreach efforts to feed the homeless, distribute clothes and hygiene kits designed for individuals experiencing homelessness. In addition to my responsibilities, I facilitate a monthly session, which I just shared about the Block by Block, which is a committee on resident services as the chair initiative. This initiative offers leaders certifications, comprehensive training in critical areas such as Stop the Bleed, Narcan, CPR, mental health, among other trainings. These programs are vital, providing leaders with essential knowledge that can be applied in their communities and everyday lives. This initiative marks the beginning of partnerships with various agencies and organizations, as well as fostering collaboration among leaders. It is imperative that we communicate effectively and recognize our shared commitment to supporting one another. Ultimately, our goal is to enhance mutual assistance, with communication being the cornerstone of our efforts. My dedication to safety is unwavering, especially in light of national safety concerns. I have been honored with several community awards. Recently, DCHA leaders have acknowledged my contributions, which I find deeply rewarding. I'm enthusiastic about continuing my service as a commissioner and effectively leading our residents. I'm committed to supporting leaders and advocating for emergency meetings and actions on their properties, and I'm readily available to assist in any capacity. Having retired from DC government where I manage casework, I possess a multi-phase understanding of the issues at hand. My experience living in public housing spans nearly 30 years, and I've been a voucher holder for almost 2. I've completed various training courses, participated in conferences, and consistently seek knowledge to enhance my support for our residents and community. My qualifications include completing first-time home buyer seminars, inclusionary zoning training, and voucher briefings. I've also educated the voucher holders on utility savings to prevent disconnections and protect their voucher benefits. My involvement extends to attending seminars, focus on homelessness, and organizing events to provide meals for the homeless, engaging in meaningful conversations, and conducting interviews and surveys. Furthermore, I coordinate clothing and food drives to benefit residents and the broader community. This summer, I'm not gonna go into it. I've also organized, many movie nights and things like that. But I prioritize the needs of residents while supporting the directorate team, DCHA staff, DCH police, and community partners. My strengths lies in my ability to engage effectively with individuals, actively listen to understand their perspectives, and empathize with the residents' needs. By meeting residents where they are, free from judgment, I fostered a strong rapport within the community. My role is to assist them, uphold respect, minimize conflict, and inspire fellow leaders to adopt a similar approach. At my core, I am a people-oriented individual. I truly believe I'm making a difference in the lives of our residents, and there is much more work to do. Thank you, Chairperson White, for this opportunity to testify before the committee, and I'll be happy to respond to any questions that you or the members have for me.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And finally, Commissioner Clay, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson White and the members of the Committee on Housing. I am Leroy Clay III, and it is my pleasure to receive your consideration for my nomination to serve on the Board of Commissioners of the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board as a non-voting member of the board. I'm grateful to Mayor Muriel E. Bowser for nominating me and honored to have this opportunity to serve the residents of the District of Columbia. Upon passage of the District of Columbia Housing Authority Stabilization and Reform Emergency Act of 2022, I was selected by the Chief Financial Officer of the District of Columbia, Glenn Lee, to serve as his designee to the Stabilization and Reform Board as a non-voting member. As an experienced financial professional and the native Washingtonian, with a sincere heart for the people of this great city, I was honored to serve. I will continue to serve as the designee of the Chief Financial Officer and not in my personal capacity. And to clarify that distinction, I have attached clarifying amendments to the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners Leroy Clay III Confirmation Resolution of 2026, PR 26540, and the Rebalancing Expectations for Neighbors, Tenants, and Landlords Rental Amendment Act of 2025, DC Law 2680. Since joining the Reform Board, we've seen many successes at the District of Columbia Housing Authority, or the Authority, which includes increasing the housing choice voucher utilization rate to 100%, increasing the public housing occupancy rate by over 10% to 86%, bringing the agency current on annual audits, and developing a comprehensive revitalization plan to renovate over 3,000 units across 19 properties. While we are proud of these successes, significant work remains. During the 2024 financial statement audit, the authority received a disclaimer of opinion, which is issued when an auditor is unable to obtain sufficient evidence to form an opinion on the accuracy of the financial statements. Additionally, the auditors found a combined 20 material weaknesses and significant deficiencies. As a result, the Reform Board recommended to the committee that the new board include a member with professional experience in accounting to provide adequate board oversight to ensure that these issues are addressed. With over 30 years of experience in accounting, auditing, and finance, I have the skills to help shepherd the agency through these challenges. I currently serve as the Associate Chief Financial Officer for the Economic Development and Regulation Cluster of the Office of the Chief Financial Officer of the District of Columbia. And in that role, I am responsible for the oversight of the financial operations of the district agencies in the Economic Development Cluster. Prior to joining the district, I worked as an auditor with the world's largest accounting and professional services firm at the time, and held other positions in accounting and finance. My experience includes helping draft financial statements and related notes and disclosures for various corporations, Sarbanes-Oxley Act implementation, which requires companies to assess and report on the effectiveness of internal controls over financial reporting, and designing internal controls to prevent or detect risk. If confirmed, I will continue to work diligently with the board and DCHA leadership to ensure that these and other challenges are addressed quickly. I will advise the authority as well as the council on what I believe is the optimal path to resolution based on my experience. The residents that DCHA serves deserve to know that the authority is a good steward of public dollars. I am committed to working with the authority to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to deliver to the residents. Thank you, Chairperson White, for the opportunity to testify before this committee. I would be happy to respond to questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank each of you for your testimonies and for being with us. I have a number of questions, so my recommendation is to be clear and concise in responses, but I've got time if you've got time. Chair Skinner, what do you consider the Star Board's most consequential accomplishment under your leadership?
Well, this may seem strange, given where we are at this point in time, but I think the best thing we did was hiring Keith Pettigrew as our executive director. As you know from his background, he's a native Washingtonian, actually lived in public housing for a while, and has extensive experience in managing other public housing agencies around the country, and had a vast network of people that he knows in the District of Columbia. And he came in with a mission in mind, created a recovery plan that was put in place to help deal with the myriad of issues that the agency had been faced with over the years. And in his 2.5 years here, was able to put in place a number of not only reforms, but new policies, procedures, and most importantly, technology improvements, which will help the agency in the long run. So I think that was most important. And then secondly, providing the I guess detailed oversight, primarily through our committees, which Commissioner Blackson mentioned, in terms of keeping on top of what's happening in the agency and holding the staff accountable for making sure that the objectives get done.
Okay. And the Star Board came in a time of crisis. Actually, we all really kind of came in together. Are there places where you think the Star Board has fallen short, where we need to look to improve, or goals that were set that weren't met?
I think, as you alluded to earlier, I think where we are now is that we need to have a vision looking forward, a strategic plan. As I said, Director Pettigrew proposed this recovery plan, and my approach, at least, was to say, okay, we like what you're doing here. We think this is a good approach. Let's go through the 3 years of the recovery plan, and then pivot to do more of a long-range strategic plan looking to the future. So, we're into going into the third year of the 3-year recovery plan. And again, I think we've made considerable progress. There are some things that still need to be done, but I think we're at an inflection point where if we can sustain the changes that we've made, that the future looks good in terms of our ability to move forward.
Would you say that the agency is on track with respect to the recovery plan?
Yes, from everything I see, looking at the the impact report that was recently released, you can see the changes. There are tons of metrics in that report where you can see changes in occupancy and utilization for the housing choice vouchers and so forth. So I think we're on track complete the goals that were laid out in the recovery plan.
And how will you approach shifting from leading a temporary crisis response board to governing on a permanent board that's responsible for long-term stability?
Yeah. So again, I think the approach is bringing everyone together. The leadership within the agency, the board members themselves, others in the community, and look to doing this, as I alluded to before, kind of a strategic plan that lays out goals, objectives for the next several years within the department. And again, as I also mentioned, we really need to sort of change the thinking in terms of being a public housing agency dependent on HUD to being a independent business, if you will, where we are independent and self-sufficient in terms of our revenues coming in and being able to do all of the things that we need to do.
I'll get to the latter point in a minute. With a change in executive leadership, who is responsible for making sure the 3-year recovery plan stays on track?
Well, there is a deputy who's in place, and the board will be meeting. Actually, we are scheduling a meeting for this Thursday to begin deliberations about the next step in terms of what happens with Director Pettigrew leaving. What I will recommend is that our deputy, Nicole Whitcliffe, be designated as the interim executive director while we discuss approach to getting a permanent person in place. So Nicole has been with the agency since Keith came, and she was, very instrumental and engaged in actually helping to build the recovery plan. And she's very much familiar with it. So it would be her responsibility to see to it, at least in the interim while she's in charge, to see that that gets done. Again, with board oversight, and we'll be checking in monthly on that. So
does the board play a role in making sure that the 3-year recovery plan stays on track?
Well, we're monitoring it, again, at monthly meetings. We look at all the metrics and, call out any anomalies or issues where we see concerns, where things are not moving in the right direction.
But you don't see the board as primarily responsible for making sure it stays on track?
I mean, I think that's how we do it. I mean, we're not doing the work, the day-to-day work, but, we're monitoring and again, holding the staff accountable. If we see something that's wrong, then we call the staff out for that and ask them, what are they going to do to fix it?
Well, the reason I'm pushing so hard on this is because, as you know, very often plans fall off track, get behind, and nobody takes responsibility. So I want to make sure I understand whether you see any accountability for the board as to whether or not this stays on track, because whether or not the Nicole, who's very smart and very talented, steps in as interim, or somebody else, it's going to be the board that really is responsible for that executive leadership and getting them in place and holding them accountable.
Yeah, no, I agree. Ultimately, the board, it's the board responsibility to make sure that it happens.
And when should the agency have a long-term strategic plan? You mentioned moving from the 3-year recovery plan to a long-term strategic plan. We're going to go into the 3rd year of the 3-year recovery plan. At what point do we anticipate having a long-term strategic plan?
Well, I think we need to begin talking about it now and thinking about what issues need to be considered as we get through this recovery plan. We need to take what we've learned from all the changes that we've made over these last 3 years and pivot to, again, thinking about what it's going to take to make, well, I'll put it this way. What do we want DCHA to look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and begin to have those conversations. I don't want to put a time frame on it at this point because it's going to take a lot of discussion, and we need to bring a lot of parties together to begin talking about it. So I'm not going to say it's going to take 6 months, 12 months. I'm just not sure at this point until we get more into it and begin thinking more about it, talking more about it.
Okay. I want to be transparent about my concerns there. Like in government, and I'm not suggesting this is you, but in government, things fall behind, they get off track, and people suffer the consequences, but nobody takes responsibility. And one of the things I want to hear from the board is, yeah, we see it as our responsibility to ensure that the 3-year recovery plan gets done in 3 years, and that by the time we finish that 3-year recovery plan, there is a long-term strategic plan in place. So I have some concerns that at your nomination hearing, you can't say, yeah, I'm going to have a long-term strategic plan by the end of the 3-year, and yes, I'm going to make sure the 3-year recovery plan stays on track. Can you commit to making sure that 3-year recovery plan stays on track?
Yes. Again, I thought I said that it is the board's responsibility to see that it stays on track.
Excellent. And there have been some practices of the STAR board, like public reporting dashboards, the committees that you mentioned, Ms. Blackson mentioned, resident engagement practices. Do you anticipate that these will carry over to the permanent board?
I would say yes. Certainly, if I'm chair of the new board, I will make sure that we continue those practices and do even more. I mean, at the last meeting, I committed to going out and having meetings in the community at some of our public housing facilities.
Excellent. That part matters a lot,
Yes.
and Commissioner Blackson, I want to thank you for your resident-focused work. We get my office has many constituents who have highlighted the impact of seeing you interacting with you, and that is an important aspect of the board. As chair of the Resident Services Committee, you mentioned some of the programs that you have developed, which I think are wonderful, and remind me of DC back in the day, and that was some of what Director Pettigrew brought to the agency that I valued, events in the individual properties. But what specific actions have you taken to strengthen communication channels between residents and DCHA staff or the board?
One of the initiatives,
Thank you.
one of the initiatives is the block by block meeting, which is a monthly meeting. So that is when resident leaders come to the meeting with concerns from their their constituents from their communities, and they get to speak directly with the director and the directorate team. So we have people from maintenance, the foremans, the PMO manager, the property managers, and area managers. Everyone's there, so they get to speak with them directly and share their concerns with them. At any other public engagement meetings that I host throughout the month, residents can always talk directly to me, and I connect them with the proper staff at DCHA for the day-to-day operations.
Let me push on that a little bit. We hear, and I know you tuned into the hearings, we hear a lot of concern about unresponsiveness and confusion when residents reach out to agency staff. How has your work impacted that? Or
I believe staff has gotten better with responding to emails and with residents trying to contact them directly. I know during the hearing, we heard a great deal of the voucher holders sharing the lack of responsiveness to emails or the specialists getting back to them. And I've worked directly with Mr. Anton Shaw, who's the director of the HCVP department. I've attended the briefings. I've spoken with the actual voucher holders who were getting their vouchers on that particular day on numerous different occasions. I've given them my card. I have been contacted directly by residents who feel that they're not getting the response that they need. And Mr. Shaw assured me that that would be taken care of.
Okay. I don't currently have a way to track, complaints or lack of responses. I do, track monthly time it takes to get repairs made, units are coming online. But I would say based on the number of complaints and concerns I get, it seems like this problem has gotten worse. And so I do have concerns about that. Again,
Okay.
I'm not looking at hard data, just the number of calls and emails that we get on this end. So we need to continue to push there. And I think that came out at the last hearing, at the oversight hearing. If reappointed, what improvements will you commit to implementing within the next 12 months?
I would improve more resident engagement. As Chair Skinner shared, he's going to start the listening sessions back up. I took it upon myself as a board member to host a chat and choose. So that was another form or platform that residents could come out directly and speak with me as a commissioner for me to share with the board and with DCHA staff the concerns of those residents. I hosted 6 of those sessions last year, and I did it by quadrant in the beginning. Like I saw all the Southeast residents. I invited the commissioners there. Commissioner Silla was well in attendance, some DCHA staff. But that was to hear directly from residents in that Southeast quadrant, like, what's your concerns? What is it that the Housing Authority is doing or not doing that we can assist with? That led to me visiting units, seeing units, helping people get repairs, directing constituents with direct contacts within DCHA staff who was readily and on hand to assist. And that went from quadrant to quadrant. Then it went to the voucher holders, ACVP participants. One chat and chew was hosted for them. Then in the end, in December, I hosted a chat and chew with all 4 quadrants, and anyone from the voucher program who missed their session could come in. And how I handled that, I would do a write-up and I would send it to the appropriate staff for whatever departments it was and get a response on how they're taking care of that resident.
Okay. I was concerned at the oversight hearing to hear some Potomac Garden residents say that they learned about the Section 18 RAD conversions during that hearing and reported hearing no prior communication from DCHA. Do you see a role for you or for the board going forward in making sure in addressing these types of communication gaps that I hear? I'm sure you hear about them too.
Yes, that was Ms. Petway. I remembered her testimony. Plus, that also was a question that came up at the Block by Block this past Thursday. Was the Block by Block hosted where Nicole Wycliffe, the deputy director, she apologized for them hearing that way, and she said that DCHA aimed to do better in prioritizing residents and making sure that they get that information up front. And that's my responsibility as well as a commissioner to ensure that resident leaders and constituents are getting the information.
Do you feel empowered as a board member to be firm with the agency when things like that happen and say, look,
Yes, I think I'm very firm. I'm a little soft-spoken sometimes, but I'm very firm in getting my point across, especially as a prior public housing resident.
Yes, you do have that reputation. Mr. Clay, as a reminder for folks, you made it clear in your testimony, you are a finance expert in this capacity on the board as part of your capacity in the Office of the Chief Financial Officer. Can you, first question, is DCHA up to date on its financial audits?
Yes, currently, we are currently going through the 2025 audit, which is due June 1st. We met with the auditors on Friday about some concerns, but we're pushing to make sure that we remain current.
Okay. And as a financial expert, how do you assess DCHA's financial outlook given current federal and local constraints?
The agency is certainly facing some challenges, especially given what we see happening with HUD. And so we are working on how do we address those challenges. We've had some discussions about what are some things that we can do to make sure that we better position the agency, both to respond to the current issues as well as what does it look like long term.
So HUD has, Chair Skinner said HUD wants to get out of the public housing business. Actually, Chair Skinner, why do you say that?
I think if you look at some of HUD's policies over the last, this goes back several years now, when they first started the RAD program. And the idea for RAD is to take units out of the public housing footprint and put them more on a private sector mode. Some people would say that's privatizing public housing. And issues that have come out again in terms of policies over these last few years, and reductions in the HUD budget, and particularly now with the current administration. I guess going back over the last year, HUD has lost maybe 25% of its staff, and even though the president had wanted to drastically reduce HUD's budget. Luckily for us, the Congress restored many of those proposed cuts. So, but we still are facing reduced funding. In the last few years, we've gotten an annual increase in our funding. Last year, it was something like 12% of what they call an adjustment factor. Last year, we got 12%. This year, it's zero.
Yeah.
In addition, they've told us that we will only get like 99% of what Congress had appropriated. So that's another 1% cut in the budget. So those things, and again, I think some of the specific pronouncements coming out of HUD telling housing authorities throughout the country that they need to move to this RAD platform or the Section 18 platform, which again takes the units out of the typical public housing regime.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that. And I agree with you. I wanted to clarify that for the record. In this 0% inflation factor, even beyond them suggesting you'll only get 99% of it, even if it was 100%, it still amounts to a cut because
yes, because the costs are going up.
Yeah, the costs are going up. So,
right, exactly.
So it's tight constraints. Thank you. Commissioner Clay, HUD has warned about these cuts and has recommended cost cutting across all housing authorities. What financial controls or priority setting should the board be looking to adopt in order to maintain its core operations in what is going to be a time of financial constraints?
I think first of all is really looking at the organization and determining, making sure that we're doing things most efficiently. I think also is looking at how we manage cash flow. And that's something that we most recently even looked into things like making sure that when we talk about cash flow, getting a low interest rate line of credit to make sure that as things change, we're still able to respond quickly. And then making plans for how do we best use our resources in terms of when we are looking at the options that are available to us. If it means making sure that we're moving properties into the RAD program, which still is better than in terms of financially, as the chair mentioned, it's better financially for the agency, making sure that we're thinking about that and thinking about how we best utilize the resources that we have.
And can the agency move into the RAD program and still meet its core mission in terms of who it houses? So the RAD program brings the private sector in, right? Which is, a whole different can of worms. These are profit-making entities. How is that going to jive with providing housing for people with little to no income?
I would say yes, that we're still committed. DCHJ is still committed to that core constituency, the lowest income members of the community, and it's going to have to be sort of a blend, if you will. I mean, we're through the changes. We'll in some instances be serving a little higher income bracket, but we're still committed to serving as many as we can in the lowest. And we've recently made some changes to focus more on trying to deal with having a path for people who are in various people who are homeless now to get into some of our units. So we're still committed to serving the lowest of the low income while making that change to move to some of these newer programs.
Do you think these changes will force the DC Housing Authority to house fewer people with the lowest incomes?
I hope not. I mean, my goal, and I think, the agency goal and the staff's goal is certainly to continue to house as many people as we can.
And if I can just add one thing to that also, we are fortunate that we are moving to work agency. So it does offer the agency a little more flexibility. I mean, when there are fewer funds, there are fewer funds, but with the agency being moving to work, it offers a little more flexibility with how funds are utilized between the voucher program and the public housing program.
So the other thing is that I think, that the moving to work, of course, deals with the federal program, but we have the LSRP program, and we really, thank the mayor and you and the council, of course, for providing those funds for the LSRP funds, and I think through the local program, we'll be much better able to serve the lower income families and who need that service.
Okay. I just always want to, the good and the bad be as transparent with folks as possible so that we all have our eyes open. I think, people can adjust if we're clear with them. And that's been one of the issues with the redevelopment projects is just, people not knowing is what's caused the most consternation. I want to talk, not surprisingly, it's the elephant in the room, about the executive director search. As I noted in my opening statement, I'm disappointed that Director Pettigrew is leaving. I've been very clear about that in my statements, and part of the reason is in dealing with this agency, I'm not making political calculations, right? When I supported the Star Board and was negotiating with the mayor on what positions, I got my butt kicked by people on both sides who didn't want their folks to leave. And as we do go through oversight continually, I'm taking a lot of heat from folks who think I'm not tough enough on the agency. I'm not tough enough on the board. So I feel like I'm trying to block to give you room to work. And then I found out in the newspaper that the executive director is leaving before the 3-year plan is over. And that made me angry. But since the announcement, I've also heard from constituents who are just as frustrated and alarmed. No surprise there. They have expressed fear as to that his leadership team will follow him out the door, that the 3-year recovery plan will fall by the wayside, we'll be back to square one, and that the residents need stronger protections during leadership transition. So it's important for the board to know that I'm not the only one who is frustrated here. The community feels it as well, and they're looking to us collectively for clarity and accountability. When did you learn that Director Pettigrew intended to leave his position, Chair Skinner?
I think I learned at the same time that you did, where someone actually texted me a copy of the article that was in the Chicago paper saying that the Board of Commissioners for the CHA had offered Mr. Pettigrew the position. So that was the first time I had found out about it.
Yeah, that's how I learned as well. Somebody texted me the article, and you and I spoke briefly after that. Does his early departure signal anything about the agency's internal conditions?
I don't think so. I mean, it was his decision on, whatever criteria he looked at and decided that he wanted to move on. But I think the agency remains in good hands, as we talked about a little bit. Our deputy, Nicole Whitcliffe, is a solid professional. She knows the business. She's been around. Again, she's been with the agency since Keith came in, so she's familiar with all of the changes that have taken place. And I think she will hold us in good stead as an interim director while we decide, the board decides how it wants to move forward in terms of a permanent director. I think I mentioned this earlier. We're scheduling a meeting for this Thursday, and that's the first time the board as a whole will be able to get together and actually begin deliberations and discussions of how we move forward.
Okay. You may not have the answer to this question yet, given what you just said about the board meeting soon, but I'm curious to know what the interim leadership plan is. Yes.
So again, my recommendation to the full board, and it's a board decision, not my personal decision.
Right.
My recommendation would be to install Nicole Whitcliffe as the interim director. You sort of asked a question about what happens to the other senior leadership team. So it is true that when Director Pettigrew came in, he brought in a number of new senior leaders in the agency. I think Nicole has worked well with them. I'm hopeful that they will continue to stay committed to DCHA and not move forward or move along to other positions. We have not had those discussions yet. I've not talked to any of the senior staff other than Nicole herself at this point.
One thing that worries me is if Nicole becomes the interim director, who becomes the new Nicole? Because she,
Right. I mean, that's, that worries me also.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer right now.
She carried a lot.
Right.
The finance contractor who testified at the January hearing, is he still on board and staying on board?
So he is still currently on board. A new CFO has been hired. I'm not exactly sure how long the contractor will be there as part of overlap, but we do have a new CFO in place as well.
Okay. So there's a new CFO in place, and the gentleman who was a contractor
So we had two contractors. One was sitting in as, he wasn't the interim CFO, but he was helping with that transition.
Yes.
There's also a contractor who's in audit and compliance as well. I'm assuming you're talking about the Steve Nolan, who is the person that came in
Yeah.
from a finance standpoint. He is still actively working as well.
Okay. Um, it was reported at one point that Director Pettigrew had a 3-year contract, but I had not seen a copy. Is that accurate?
He actually had a 5-year contract.
Okay. And what happens if he leaves now that he's leaving before the end of the 5-year term?
He just had to give us adequate notice. The contract required that he give us 60-day notice, which he did. The board decided to, since he had decided to leave and, was going to be a lame duck, we didn't think it was necessary for him to, stick around for 60 days. So we mutually agreed on a April 17th departure date.
Sure. Can you share a copy of the contract with the committee?
I think, I'm thinking, I thought we did when he first came on board.
I don't recall having seen it, so.
Okay. All right. As long as there, I will check with our general counsel, because I think that may have been an issue as to why, if you didn't see it, that may have been some interpretation that it was, private or we couldn't share it publicly.
Okay.
Okay.
That would be odd if you couldn't. So,
Okay.
but we'll follow up on that. What the next director is coming in at a different stage in the agency's life cycle. For all the things I've mentioned around concerns with responsiveness, financial management, culture and morale issues, which came out in the oversight hearing, there are a lot of things that are in much, much better shape than they were just a couple of years ago. Getting the audits done, time for unit repairs, the integrity of the data that I used to get from the agency meant nothing. It now does mean something. Relationships with HUD, resident sentiment, although I'm starting to see a slide there, so I want to be attentive to it. So the next executive director is not coming into a building that's on fire. What performance metrics are you thinking about for the next executive director's contract, so that there's a collective understanding as to whether they are moving the agency in the right direction?
So I think what we need to do, and again, we have not done this yet, is as we're recruiting for the next executive director, develop sort of a profile of what we want to see in the executive director, and including that will be some expectations given where we are, expectations for what the board would like to see in a new director, and specific metrics that we will be looking for them to accomplish and hold them accountable for.
Will you commit to making the contract for the next executive director public?
I cannot commit to that because, again, I'd have to talk to our general counsel and see.
Do you have any concerns? So if there are no legal issues, do you have any concerns?
If there are no legal issues, yeah. But I mean, personally, my feeling is that it's a private document that should not be shared publicly. If I had my say, I would not share it. And again, I'm just being honest.
Yeah. But why is that?
Because it's a private contract between that individual and the agency.
To lead a public agency, though. Yeah, I think, one of my mantras with the agency is more transparency is better.
Right.
There's, I said it before, when Director Pettigrew was coming on board, can only move at the speed of trust. And there's just no way around the sunlight is going to solve a lot of problems. But we'll talk through that. Yeah, I'd be surprised if there are legal concerns, but I think it just helps to instill trust. The permanent board, again, the Star Board is a temporary board. The permanent board will not be complete for a number of months. Elections for resident commissioners won't begin until June. Should the board wait to begin the search for the executive director until the board is complete, the permanent board is complete?
That would be my preference. And again, I'm concerned about the slowness in getting the new permanent board in place. Under the rental acts and things were to have, I guess, already happened in terms of nominations coming forward and getting the new board in place. So I just hope we can move as quickly as possible to get the new board on board. And as you alluded to earlier, there were a couple people that we thought were going to be on who have now withdrawn. So I'm worried about being able to have a quorum so we can do business.
And who's responsible for that timing of the new board?
So I guess the mayor has to provide the nominations to the council.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of the way the process works.
Okay. Yep. All right. So we need the mayor to act, then we need this committee to act, and the council to act.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, I'm really concerned about being able to have a quorum at our meetings going forward.
And the residents, they'll be elected. So
they'll be elected again. My understanding is, as you said, that we probably, they're going through a process of putting the procedures in place. There has to be, I guess, a nominating process and then the actual election. And it looks like May, June timeframe before we have the first person elected.
Okay.
And again, I'm not exactly clear, but I think once they get elected, I'm not sure what the process is for actually having them. They don't. I don't know if they have a confirmation. I'm not sure how.
I'm not sure either.
Right.
I doubt it. But in terms of getting to the election, who's in charge of that?
The staff, DCHA staff. I think the resident services team is responsible for that, and they've hired an outside firm to actually manage and run the election.
Sure.
They're having information sessions already on the.
Excellent. And you're gonna make sure they move along,
Yeah.
Commissioner Blackson?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm with you on that. I got you.
So I have a notion what your answer will be, but given the frustrations, not mine, those are less important than residents, about the relatively early departure of Director Pettigrew, should the council have confirmation authority over the executive director, given how consequential that leadership position is at DCHA in moving a massive agency forward?
I think you guessed my my answer, and that is no. No, I think clearly that's the responsibility of the board.
Hmm.
And if I may also raise, I know there's been significant discussion over the component unit for the District of Columbia as well. And that level of oversight or authority could have an impact on that determination as well.
Okay. The mayor appoints the heads of our agencies. They are still confirmed by the council, and so that's the chief executive that, the board selects an executive director. And so I wouldn't see it as being completely out of line. Now, I want to be honest. I want to have less to do with the housing authority, not more. It may not seem that way, but when there are issues or concerns and there's not enough sunlight on them, we come put sunlight on them, because I'm not going to get stuck in this we don't trust the agency and you got to blow the whole thing up. I'm not getting stuck in that. I want to put sunlight on it, and so I really don't have a desire to be involved in the director search. But my name is on the line too as the agency moves forward. And if this 3-year plan stalls, they're going to say, Councilmember White, weren't you chair of the housing committee when that happened? And I got to be able to say, yeah, I fought to make sure we got that over the finish line, which is one of the reasons I'm pushing you, because people are behind me pushing me as they should be. But this transition raises a lot of concerns, given the history of housing issues in the city beyond the housing authority. It's yeah. So in advance of we'll move on to like board governance and accountability issues. In advance of today's hearing, I asked you to review DCHA's, the agency's pre-hearing responses from last month's performance oversight hearing, and flag 2 areas of the greatest concern or priority in agency performance. What 2 areas did you identify as the most urgent for board attention?
This commission,
Go ahead.
Denise Blackson, I flagged more of the voucher holder statements, the voucher holder testimony. And mine was to, continue to try to work with the voucher division. And I don't have my paperwork with me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Commission. But that's what I plan to do, is to work with, Mr. Shaw. I've also invited them to present at the next Resident Service Committee meeting. Not looking at my notes off the top of my head, but I wanted them to present on more effective with the RFTA package, like how are they responding, like once they receive the package? Because I know a lot of times when the residents reach out to me, they not sure. They'll say, well, the landlord said they submitted it, but they're not getting a response. So I want to know, like, how is he evaluating that? Like, who's responding, who gets notification that it was received? Does the resident who's also in looking to rent that unit, do they get a confirmation? Like, what are we doing moving forward to ensure that we don't have the same thing keep happening? Because a lot of residents reach out directly to me by email in reference to the voucher division. And another part of that is I wanted to know, like, the response time, who's monitoring the response time from the specialist to the resident? Because residents will say, I went there and I submitted my work. I also emailed my work, and I put my package up, and whatever portal it is, they did all that. So
Okay.
how's it being monitored?
One thing I would add to that, please, I think this is an important area to focus, is the confusion about whether vouchers are local or federal. We hear from residents that they don't know, but we also hear from residents that the DCHA staff don't know. I don't know if that's true, but that is something that I hear, which seems like a fixable problem. Thanks.
Thank you.
So one of my biggest concerns is really our ability to fully implement and sustain the many reforms that we've already put in place, particularly some of the technology improvements. If we can't, really make those things stick and really change how we do business, then it's going to be all for naught. So I want to make sure that like all of the, again, focusing just for a second on the technology things, like you've heard about Yardi and all the different modules of Yardi, which is really now running the agency, from the finance department to the vouchers and public housing, to like the Rent Cafe, which allows public housing residents to look at their I guess all of the things in their folder, and actually to pay rent online now. And the affordablehousing.com, which is now used for the rent reasonableness. There's a landlord portal, which I don't think is yet up and running, but will come online. And again, it'll allow the landlords to look at their properties and deal with DHCD directly online. So those changes really will make all the difference in the world. And so at this point, we really need to make sure that we work out all the kinks in those processes. And because you hear some of the concerns, and Mr. Blackson just mentioned some of those, that we really need to work out the kinks in all of those processes and make sure that they take hold and become part of the culture of the agency. So I think that's critical for allowing us to move forward and to make that pivot that we talked about to looking to the long range future. And as far as the what the board is responsible for, again, the board has to provide that oversight and monitoring on a monthly or even if necessary a weekly basis to make sure that those things continue to stay on track and really get built into the culture of the agency.
Okay, thank you.
And I would say one of the areas for me is building trust, both with external and internal stakeholders. I think that an area that could be beneficial is providing more opportunity for board engagement with employees. Not necessarily formal, but even informal, but making sure that employees also get a chance to see us and engage with us. I think that's necessary, and I think it could be helpful. And so one of the things that I think we can, as a board, can do is create those opportunities to do that.
So another priority and concern is making sure we keep the IRB program on track. We have the opportunity for the first time in really decades to redevelop a large segment of the DCHA portfolio. Residents have been waiting much too long for this to happen. So we need to do everything in our power to make sure that program stays on track and we begin the redevelopment of these properties. At this point, it looks like the first bonds will be issued maybe late summer at this point. So by the fall, we should see some actual shovels in the ground in terms of this redevelopment plan.
Excellent. I appreciate those. I think for these projects, they just so many of them have been kicked around so
Right,
long,
yeah.
and then changes in leadership, but they start over, then another change, they start over again. Keeping those going is going to be very, very important, as well as the larger changes in systems that you mentioned. Commissioner Blackson, the voucher program, it does continue to need attention. Again, fixable problem, but probably not without some attention and intention to say, hey, what are we going to do differently? How are we going to measure progress? And then Commissioner Clay, trust, particularly within the agency, is still vitally important. We're still, as I see it, in the building stage, building trust, and something like that can go either way. And having trust within the agency and that openness, people feeling heard, they'll show up to work differently. And so I appreciate you pointing to that.
Sure, thanks.
I don't want to harp on it because I know we mentioned it earlier, but it is important. It's one of those things that I was distraught at the last hearing with the number of people who came to testify about communication issues, communication failures, long leasing timelines, poor customer service. I want to make sure we don't ignore that. We had dozens of DCHA residents testify about their struggles with the agency, and also of concern to me is that one of the people who came to testify after speaking with DCHA staff in the hallway was in my office in tears for quite some time. So these things falls, I guess, let me ask this as a question. What in terms of communication between the agency and DCHA residents or clients falls squarely under the executive director's authority, and what is to some extent the responsibility of the board?
From my perspective, it falls with the executive director. If the executive director is not doing the job, then it's, it's the board's responsibility to do whatever it can to make sure that does get taken care of. I mean, ultimately, the executive director reports to the board. The board has the authority and responsibility to hire and fire. I mean, if he's not doing the job, ultimately, we can get rid of him, in the worst case scenario. But I think ultimately, the executive director and the culture of excellence and responsiveness, customer service needs to flow from that level down to the rank and file staff who are on the phone with our customers on a day-to-day basis. And they need to understand that they need to communicate, get back to residents, callers in a certain time frame. And if they don't, they need to be held accountable, again, up and down the line.
All right. But it seems clear that that's not happening at this point. So what is?
Well, I think, again, given we have, 13,000 federal vouchers, 6,000 local vouchers, that's, 20,000 vouchers. You're always going to have some percentage that kind of fall through the cracks or there's some issues with some small percentage. We strive for excellence. We want to be 100% correct. But the reality is, we're all human. We all make mistakes. And, we're just not going to, I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where everything is there are no complaints. Get to the point where there are no complaints.
So no complaints and 80 people showing up to a hearing, it's a lot of space between those two. So if you're not concerned with what you heard at the oversight hearing.
I didn't say I wasn't concerned. I am concerned.
Okay.
But what all I'm saying is, again, having worked in a number of agencies over 50 years, I have not seen any situation where it was perfect, where there were no complaints.
I don't think that's the conversation we're having, though, right? I'm not saying there should be no complaints. I'm saying there are a lot of complaints, and the number of complaints are increasing. And I'm asking, do you see an issue with that? And if so, what are you or the board doing about it?
Yes, I see an issue. And again, I'm saying it's the director's responsibility and his chain of command down staff to focus on that. And what the board will do is, again, provide the monitoring oversight, hold the director accountable.
And what is that looking like right now?
Well, it's looking like meeting with them, talking with them, going over the situations and one of the things that we do as a board, when people come to the board meetings and have issues, complaints about the service that we provided, we follow up. The board gets a chart at the end of each meeting saying, who the resident was that complained and what happened, what the staff follow-up was. So continue to have processes in place like that to make sure that it happens.
So
No, I was just going to say I was going to speak.
Good.
I will get to you, Commissioner Blacks, but what I'm hearing from you, Chair Skinner, is where you see an issue, you'll address it through oversight. And I'm trying to clarify. I'm seeing an issue. I think you say you see an issue.
Right.
So how are you doing that oversight right now with respect to communication between the agency and clients?
Again, a meeting with the staff, which we did after the last meeting. I personally talked to the deputy director. I know she had some conversations with her staff. She said that she would put some new procedures in place to make sure, again, that the communication was improved.
Okay. Commissioner Blackson?
Yes, I was gonna say, I look at it as residents first, so we need to serve the residents, because that's why we're all here, to serve the residents. And I wanted to say, when I go to community meetings or I get a complaint from a resident, it doesn't have to be the resident leader, but I get complaints from a resident. And sometimes if I get several complaints from that same property, what I do is ask if I can come to their meeting and address their concerns there. But what I bring with me is the director or the directorate team for all the issues and concerns that that resident may have. I try to bring the right people in the room. If it's with the Housing Authority Police, I say, put the Housing Authority Police in the room. If MPD plays a role as well, public servants, anybody I can bring into that room. If it's about safety, if it's about management, even if it's private management, we have the private manager also in the room. And I share as a commissioner, what's acceptable and not acceptable. And if it's not happening, to please contact me, and I always share my contact information so I can bring that back to the board. That's why I'm heavy on resident engagement, to get these concerns and put the right people in the room so we can make sure that this is not continuing to take place or be of a concern.
Okay. One of the concerns that the committee has heard is complaints that the board skirts the Open Meeting Act requirements and conducts business out of public view. An example is the education symposiums, which according to meeting minutes are closed almost every time. What are these symposiums?
They cover different issues. A good example, I think there's ethics training that we have. And as you know, I guess in the law that the board is supposed to have certain number of hours of education during annually, and we've broken that up and try to have, I think, quarterly education sessions that cover topics like, as I mentioned, ethics, budget, procurement, things of that nature.
Is business conducted during these meetings?
No, they're purely educational.
And how does, go ahead.
No, I was going to say there's no deliberations or votes taken at any of those. We have presentations.
How does the board determine whether a meeting will be open or closed?
Well, frankly, I mean, we look to our general counsel to make those interpretations.
And no decisions being made in those meetings?
No.
Let's talk about audits for a moment. The 2022 HUD report, the city's Office of Inspector General Audit and the agency's Office of Audit and Compliance Observations show a pattern of findings of mismanagement across the agency for the past several years. And I've been concerned by the agency's inability to resolve these findings, and I've been concerned about the inability to resolve them and the consistency of these. Can you say definitively whether responsibility for getting to the other side of these findings fall with the board?
So, I mean, ultimately, the responsibility for getting the work done is with the executive director. Again, the board is responsible for monitoring, holding its feet to the fire to see that the work gets done and that we get these issues resolved. And we do that, for example, with the HUD monitoring report, where I think it was 103 findings, something like that. There was actually in the beginning, we set up a separate board subcommittee to focus just on that and to work with the staff and monitor the staff all along as they were working on those on responses to that HUD report. So, and you know, it's been what, almost 3 years now, and we're at the point now where the only thing left, we've closed all of those findings, except for I think there's technically seven that are still open, that are part of the either the administrative plan or ACOP for administrative plan for vouchers and the ACOP for public housing. So I mean, that's where we are on the HUD audit. So again, you know, it's taken a long time, and part of it was a lot of back and forth with HUD, because we would submit information to HUD and HUD would take 6 months, 8 months, and we never hear anything from them. So, you know, for them to actually close those findings. So that's where we are with HUD, and I think Commissioner Clay can probably do a better job in talking about the financial audits and where we are with them.
With OIG.
Yeah.
So first of all, I echo what the chair said in terms of responsibility. I will note, however, that to the extent that we do. Last week, I met with the team and the external auditors to talk about some issues. We get involved to the extent that we can help push things along, but ultimately, and as a board, we are responsible for that oversight, but ultimately it's the agency who has to execute and make it happen. In terms of where we are with the audit, I think that I think we have about 9 issues that remain outstanding in terms of out of the 20 material weaknesses and significant deficiencies. Still working on the other 11. I think there were 20 in total. The other 11 to determine whether or not they will actually be closed in the next audit. And so there have been a lot of procedures that have been put in place to address the issues that were raised. And so we're still working to determine, well, does that completely close out the issue, or are there still some lingering results? For example, one of the findings had to do with fixed assets and use of a fixed asset module. Currently, the agency is fully using a fixed asset module, but the physical inventory hasn't been done and reconciled to that module. So they're still working on that. Auditors may come back and say, okay, you've addressed this, but there's still some issues there, might not completely close out that finding. So there are things like that we're working on, but we are actively involved in working with the agency, really pushing to get through these issues.
So one of the things that's come up, I appreciate the work that's been done, but we had discussed during one of our recent hearings issues of financial management concerns, like funding streams not being well delineated or tracked. And one example was the repair and maintenance funding.
Mm-hmm.
We see examples like that, from the HUD report to the OIG audit to the Office of Audit and Compliance observations. Chair Skinner, you mentioned, I mean, you all know that I know that you don't do the day-to-day work, right?
Sure.
I know that. Right. But you mentioned you hold the agency's feet to the fire. What does that look like in this instance?
It looks like continued monitoring, calling, meeting, asking hard questions as to why things aren't getting done.
And with respect to use this example, the repair maintenance funds, or the general financial management concerns about funding streams, what's the reason for that, and where are things now?
That one I'm not clear on. I don't know if
so I can speak to it a bit. My understanding, specifically when we talk about the repair and maintenance fund, some of that reconciliation did also predate the current team, and not using that as an excuse, but I think one of the things that we did also discuss in the hearing is that going back and reconciling some accounts like that where you have to go back and pull actual support, pull documentation to understand what happened, that does take time. I think one of the things we have seen, however, is that as these things take longer, we also have seen the deputy director, which I know that you said if she becomes the interim, who becomes the deputy director, but we've seen her more involved also in this process. And so when we talk about how we hold people accountable, it's what are you doing? What is it happening timely? And if it's not happening timely, what additional things are you going to do to make this happen? And an example is the deputy director saying, you know what, I've had to jump in also and make sure that this is getting done. And seeing that folks are working on this and are committed to cleaning it up, I think are some of the things that we have a responsibility to make sure that that's happening.
So if somebody is watching the hearing and they want to know, given the consistency of some of the concerns that have been raised, what material changes to governance, staffing, internal controls has been made, what would be the answer?
I think I know for me, being more involved, asking more difficult questions, I think also testing information a little bit more. When I say testing information, if we're told this item has been closed, digging in and saying, what have you done to close it? Have you considered this? I think something that we are doing more is, from our standpoint, digging in deeper to better understand, to make sure that if someone says that this is closed, it is in fact closed. Or if they say it's closed, is it really closed, or are there some other issues that remain, and what's being done to address those issues? I think we've done that more. I think from a standpoint of what the agency is doing more, I think one of the challenges has been making sure that we have, and I think this is being addressed right now, is one, making sure that we still have BDO contractors who are in helping to go back and reconcile those accounts. And so also I met with PUL last week to say, hey, what are you guys doing? Where are we with this? And to better understand those issues. I think those are the things that need to happen. Those are the things that we're doing.
So one of my concerns is that it feels like we're not being given credit for the work that we have done. You know, you keep saying that these are lingering problems that keep coming up over and over. And I think we've addressed, on the audit questions, we've addressed all of the findings and taken direct steps to deal with the issue. We've hired additional staff. We've brought in the outside contractors, BDO and Baker Tilly, and we're working through all of those. So again, there's a lot of distance between where we started and where we are now. And, you know, we're not quite there yet in terms of, again, you know, technically closing out all those findings, but we've made a lot of progress. And you know, I'm just feeling that we're not getting credit for that.
Let me give you credit for all the things that you all have done. I mean, we don't generally spend our time talking about the things that are going well, because the point is to keep fixing it and getting better. And I don't mean that to dismiss the things that are going well. And I try to take some time to talk about those things, but those generally aren't the focus. What I want to make sure we don't see is another audit that has the same tenor of the ones that we've seen, and we have seen several over a short amount of time. So it is important to face those directly. I'm sure I could do a better job of, you know, congratulating the work that has been done. I try to do some of that, but I spend our time on where are the things that we got to keep fixing and make sure it's clear that we're all on the same page about what needs to be done. How is financial decision-making different today than it was when the Star Board started?
Well, I mean, I think there are different actors in place. What comes up to us in terms of what the board eventually approves are the budget, the day-to-day financial decisions get made at the staff, again, at the staff level. And, you know, again, we went through one CFO that initially Keith brought in. She decided to leave. So we have a new CFO now. But within that Office of Finance, there have been, I think you met the deputy there, and she had continued to make decisions and make recommendations in terms of how things get paid. But ultimately, what comes up to the board is really the budget, and we have to approve the budget.
Are there any changes as the board moves to a permanent board? Are there any changes necessary to the committee structure?
That's one thing that I definitely want to look at because now we have less people. On the previous board, we had 11. Now we're down to 7. I'm sorry, to 9 on this board. 7 appointed and the 2 residents. So I want to look at the committee structure, see how we might make some change to that. And I'm concerned again is with the timing. Again, this is a volunteer board, and people. I'm sensitive to the board members' time and how much time it takes to staff these to work on these committees, and then do the monthly board meeting as well. So I want to look at that, but I can't tell you today exactly what kind of changes would be made or that I would recommend making.
What about with respect to engaging directly with residents? How does the board do that now?
Well, I mean, we have the monthly board meetings. The residents come and testify, and as Commissioner Blacksmith said, there are a number of meetings that are done through the Resident Services Committee. Board members are invited to those, and at different times, different board members engage.
There were, at the last board meeting, Commissioner Silla noted that the board hasn't held public listening sessions, and that one should be organized to help repair lack of trust or concern
Right.
from residents that they're
And
not
at that meeting, I committed to having those public listening sessions, and I tasked one of our staff with scheduling those. And again, there's logistics involved in terms of finding an appropriate place that's big enough to house the board. And the other issue, of course, if we meet as a board, we have to follow the open meetings, and we got to figure out a way to make those public and be able to stream those. So, there's some logistics involved, but I'm personally committed to doing it. Again, as we go through this board transition, there'll be new board members. So, I want to make sure that, there's some consensus on the board around doing this.
To what extent do board members tour public housing?
It varies. I mean, I have specifically requested to go out and tour certain developments from time to time, just so I get an idea of what they look like. I'm generally familiar with the city. I'm thinking, going back to my days when I worked in the city planning office and we were doing the comprehensive plan, I was driving all around the city, and all of those, for the most part, the vast majority of those projects or developments were in place back in the 80s when I was doing that. So, I'm generally familiar with them, but from time to time, I will ask the director, I want to see what's happening at Langston. I want to see what's happening at some other property. And so, individually, I think board members can ask or do. And sometimes just driving around the city, just driving past to see what it looks like. That's different from actually, going in and engaging with the residents.
Yeah. Still on resident engagement, I think a listening session is going to be important, but Are there any specific steps or new mechanisms that you plan to put in place to improve resident engagement?
I can't say today specifically, but overall, I'm committed to improving resident engagement. And clearly, my colleague to my right here will help me in that regard, I'm sure.
And you mentioned this earlier, but I want to come back to it because I didn't fully track the answer. How do you verify that DCHA follows up with residents who raise concerns at board meetings?
Again, we get a listing after the board meeting. We get a listing of all the residents who testified, what the issue was, and how the staff followed up.
Okay. You get that from the
We get that from
staff?
from the staff. Mhm.
The Housing Choice Voucher Program Customer Service Center at 702 H Street was closed on March 13th due to structural concerns, and the building was issued a notice of infraction for fire safety violations and unsafe interior structural conditions. Does the board expect immediate notification of situations like this?
Yes, and I do get immediate notification. And what I try to do is when something like that happens, is send an email to the full board and letting them know. So Keith or Nicole will call me directly and let me know what happened. And then I will communicate with the rest of the board.
Okay. And are you satisfied in the continuity of services and timely communication to staff and residents, using this issue as an example?
On this
What-
particular issue?
Yeah, so let me separate it out.
Yeah.
For the public, will there be continuity of services? So folks who used to
Yeah,
report to.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I misunderstood your question. Yes, absolutely. The staff was, I think, dispersed to different centers. We have three public communication centers, public offices where residents can come in. So the staff that was at 702 have been dispersed to other centers.
Okay.
And that, as far as I know, it's been communicated. It's been put on our website and communicated. I'm not sure exactly what other mechanisms, but I know it is on the website.
Okay. And the communication happened rapidly enough for staff as well. Staff were notified about the closure.
I can't say definitely. I mean, I'm assuming that the staff was. I mean, I know there have been some complaints from the union leadership about that, and I haven't gotten directly involved in it, but the director and deputy director have been handling it.
But I do believe that, pretty sure there was an email that went out the same day. If I
Okay.
can remember correctly. Yep.
Yeah, I should note that before that happened, I was alerted to days before the notice of infraction and it be closed, concerns from the folks who work there who said they've been raising concerns, haven't been listened to, reached out for assistance, and you know things progress as they did. But that raised concerns for me that the folks who work in that space were letting the agency know there's some issues here and weren't being listened to. What's your read on that?
I think the staff did respond. I mean, I know Director Pettigrew went out to the site. I'm not sure who else in terms of his staff or other. I think there may have been an outside vendor to go and look at the building. But yes, I mean, I think the director got directly involved and talked to the staff. And then again, particularly the union leadership
Mhm.
who, they emailed me, emailed the board. I know they emailed you and I think the mayor and everyone else. But I think the staff handled it appropriately.
My assumption is that by the time they were emailing me and the mayor, they had been trying to communicate this to the agency leadership already unsuccessfully.
Well, they communicated. I don't think the agency leadership did necessarily did what they wanted them to do, but they did communicate. I mean, they were talking back and forth. I'm positive of that.
So if the staff and the union reach out to me and say, hey, there's an issue in this space, and we've been flagging it and it hasn't been listened to, and then I engage and within a day or two, there's a notice of infraction for structural concerns, and my read is the normal channels weren't working. So your view might be different. I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of your engaging, I think that was just, it just happened to work that way, that when you got involved, it was at the point where that was going to happen anyway, that, the shutdown was going to happen anyway. So
Okay.
I can't say that, that was because of your engagement.
Okay.
But again, I'm clear that the staff was talking to the employees and talking to the union leadership, and they were going back and forth over a period of time.
Yeah. Okay. The point I'm making is I don't know that the notice of infraction came because my office got involved. What I'm suggesting is there seemed to be a long runway before that where the response from the agency was not satisfactory. And that's what I'm trying to get a handle on is whether or not that was the case. But I take your point. From your view, that was not the case. They were working cooperatively on that.
Yeah, they were communicating.
No. What does that mean?
They were they were talking.
What's the difference between working cooperatively and communicating?
I don't know that there is a difference, but
Okay, so they were working cooperatively.
They were working cooperatively. We can say that.
All right. One other staff thing I want to clear up, when we had a hearing with Director Pettigrew and I asked him who approved putting the OAC staff on leave. He said the board. Is that right? It was the board who put OAC on leave?
The OAC.
Office of Audit and
Okay.
Compliance.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Yes, we jointly, the way that office, it says that the director of that office reports jointly to the executive director and the board.
Yes.
So it was done jointly with a letter signed by Keith as executive director and myself as the board chair.
Okay, so it was done jointly.
Yeah, jointly. Yeah.
Which is different than from what the director said. He said it was the board.
It was, I think you probably have seen the letter, right? I don't know, but it was from both of us.
Okay. On capital budget projects, is the last major issue I want to touch on. The DCHA has $77 million in unspent capital funding, plans to obligate about half of that in FY26 and half in FY27. The agency indicated that $26 million has been obligated in FY26, about $18 million for projects in the design phase and about $8 million for projects in the planning phase. How will you ensure those funds are deployed without delay? So again, this is the $77 million in unspent capital funding.
we're relying on the staff and to give us reports on what they're doing, when they anticipate the spending, if there's contracts involved, if the board has to sign off on a contract, making sure we do that in a timely basis. And then again, just, continuing to monitor to make sure that that those expenditures take place.
And with respect to HUD-approved offline units, that number right now is going up. The March report indicates that there were 1,827 HUD-approved offline units as of February, which is up from 1,698 in January. Are there plans in place to bring some of those units back online?
I'm not exactly sure, but I think most of those are probably in the properties where that will get the bond financing, and we're leaving those units vacant until that process gets underway.
And if they get bond financing, what happens at that point?
So I mean, all of those units will be renovated.
Okay.
But right now, it looks, initially the idea was that we could do the in-place renovations where we would, move residents around to different units. We could rehab some, move folks around. It looks like now that we have to, in some cases, vacate the entire building.
Yeah.
So we're trying to leave some of those vacant.
I mean, yeah, I recognize some of the buildings won't be able to be rehabbed. They'll have to be demolished. But my bigger concern is where we're going in terms of the overall number of units. What are we striving for, and by when? 10 years from now, are we going to have fewer units online than we have now? They're going to be more.
I really can't answer that.
If I may though, whenever we talk about the plan for a building, we always ask the question, are we going to have fewer units, more units? And it has been a goal, one, to make sure that if residents want to move back in, they have the option to be able to do that. And so we try to make sure that there are at least the same number of units when we're redeveloping, if not more. Now, when you talk about, however, just what's offline versus what's online, as the chair noted, a lot of that does have to do with, especially the increase, are units that are taken offline so that we could do that rehabilitation work.
My concern is we need more clarity and visibility around where we're moving with respect to the number of public housing units.
Yeah.
I hear you, and I will get with the staff and see if we can get some more detailed information on exactly what's happening.
Please do follow up on that, and that's a key metric I want to make sure we're all clear on. And with respect to the folks who were working at that building in H Street, are they in a different location, or are those folks working from home now?
My understanding is that some are in a different building, some are in fact working from home, and what they're trying to do is, I think, rotate the staff so that some days some are working from home, other days they're actually in the office.
Okay. Where will they be? When will they be in a permanent place again? Will it be back on H Street or somewhere else?
I'd have to check with the staff to find out. I'm not sure.
Okay. And I'm wondering if they know the answer to that question as well.
Yeah, I will find out.
Thank you. And back to capital spending, the DCHA has a long history of capital underspending and project delays. Obviously, we all want to see the capital spending used efficiently as soon as possible and projects to keep moving. What needs to happen now? Again, we're in another time of transition. That's the key moment when these things fall through the cracks, fall behind. How do we ensure that the capital funding gets spent and that the projects keep going on pace?
So I would say, again, while the director has left or will be leaving, we have a really competent team in place that can continue to focus on these projects and make sure that the money does get spent. I'm confident in the team that we have in place. They know what they're doing. And I think for the most part, I'm thinking back, a couple of years when I first came on the board and what that spending looked like. And I know there were a lot of unspent funds. Now, I think we're in a much better place than we were 3 years ago in terms of our ability to spend the district's capital funding. But again, it's one of those situations where I can directly talk with the staff and make sure that I understand where they are and what the prognosis is for being able to spend the money in a timely fashion. And we can get back to you on that.
Okay. Please do. I want to make sure we are tracking these things in transition.
Right. Yeah.
Again, this is the time
Yeah.
where things fall behind.
So again, I personally want to make sure that we keep the leadership team in place, and I will be talking to all of the vice presidents directly and assuring them that we want to continue to move forward. We've made a lot of progress, and we want them to stay and continue.
Yeah. So to wrap us up, this is something I really want to focus on. If things get dropped in transition and we have directors who stay 2.5, 3 years, then a lot of these projects never get done. So like Greenleaf, right? Been talking about that since before I was on the council. And I can't go back in time, but I can make sure these things don't repeat themselves. So asked my team to do some digging, and it looks like contracts for the Chicago Housing Authority are public. So I doubt that there is a legal prohibition from making them public. I think it is important to make these things public, especially right now, so that we have a shared understanding of the expectations, whether it's the amount of time somebody's going to stay, whether or not there are penalties if they leave early, which would give us more confidence that they would stay, how their work is going to be evaluated so that we can all be on the same page, and that is something I'm going to push for. But again, want to note that it looks like Chicago's public housing director contracts are public, and I want to look at the current contract to make sure, because let's say the contract says there's a penalty for leaving early, then and we say nothing, folks are rightly going to look at us sideways. If the board says nothing, folks are rightly going to look at you sideways. And so to protect your credibility, which is important right now, I want to make sure the committee can see it. And, I wouldn't release it publicly, on my own, but I want to make sure we can see it. But I also would encourage you to make it public so that we're not lost in discussion about, people's, assumptions or rumors or what have you. But, I try to continue to impress upon folks sunlight is the best remedy for a lot of these issues. So I just want to be clear about what direction I'm gonna push on that, and in ensuring that the teams across the housing authority have everything they need during this transition, and understanding where the folks who are on H Street, where they are working from now, and in where we're going. I don't know how long, like a notice of infraction, things could be fixed in a month or two, or maybe it's more severe. I don't know, but I want to make sure we have clarity on that. And I know that the director is made a big deal of having that H Street location open. So I imagine it is important. And so I want to make sure we know that. Those are all the questions I have. So I want to again thank you for your work. It is a lot of work, a lot of scrutiny. Agency has come a long way. As I said at the beginning, what's important is for us to understand where the agency started a few years ago when you all came into place and when I came in place. That can't be the baseline anymore. We're better than that now. And then, our goal is to continue getting better. So I appreciate you all stepping forward in these capacities and being with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For folks who are watching and want to submit written testimony, written testimony will be made part of the official record. You can submit that to April 7th is the deadline. You can submit it to yes, through the hearing management system. But if you don't know where that is, email, contact the housing@dccouncil.gov. The business before this committee is concluded. The time is 12:36 p.m. and we are adjourned.